The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, the 22nd of June, 2016, are currently trading with gold at $1,265.56 an ounce, silver $17.28 an ounce, Texas crude $48.85 a barrel, and Bitcoin dropped to 625 U.S. currency. Today in history, last year, 2015, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley calls for the removal of the Confederate flag from the State House grounds in the wake of the senseless killings in a Charleston historic church. It was this event which led to the nationwide ban on the Confederate Dixie flag. Today in history. In recent news, House Democrats had a sit-down on the floor of the House chamber today. They effectively forced the House into a temporary recess as part of an effort to get Republicans to vote on gun control legislation. Representative John Lewis, Democrat from Georgia, a civil rights leader who led sit-ins all throughout the 1960s, led the effort with sharp criticisms towards Congress for not voting in favor to pass more gun restrictions. Democrats are planning to essentially hijack the House floor both Wednesday and Thursday in an effort to get gun control measures a hearing. A spokeswoman for Representative Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, Ashley Strong, said that, quote, the House cannot operate without members following the rules of the institution, so the House has recess subject to the call of the chair. As the minority party, Democrats have virtually no power over which bills are voted on. The only thing they can do is protest or use procedural maneuvers, of which they plan to do both this week, so keep your eyes on the House floor. Ultimately, the goal is to force lawmakers to vote on a bipartisan bill that would give the FBI and Attorney General the power to ban people on the controversial no-fly list from purchasing firearms. According to a government report by the Treasury Department released today, the trust fund used to pay hospital insurance costs for Medicare will be emptied out by 2028, about 2 years earlier than calculated, while the Social Security Trust Fund has enough cash to pay full benefits for only another 18 years. The trustees overseeing both stated that reforms are needed in order to avoid cutting health care and retirement benefits for Americans. Acting Commissioner of the Social Security Administration, Carolyn Colvin, said that increasing payroll taxes by slightly more than 1% could improve the solvency of the fund over the next 75 years. Maybe it's time we start looking for and creating options that don't involve Uncle Sam. This is Rick Rohde with your lowdown for June 22nd, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the walls. The chair is against the walls. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you.
Okay.
The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
I can see it coming. The moment it comes with the food.
Bitcoin is immune from attack or almost completely. With Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using the computing power to generate Bitcoins.
There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast if it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Crypto Show, a show about disruptive technology, currency, and liberty with a pinch of stick in it to the man. As always, we come to you live from the real heart of the resistance in Austin, Texas, deep beneath the Chase Bank with a stack of Bitcoin miners at our back, undermining the bank and the man. We bring to you the latest info from those hacking away at the digital revolution and having some fun while we do it.
Longest time. You said that Bitcoin was my life. All right, welcome guys to the Crypto Show, to the lovely tunes of Xiaotong, ZhouTonged. Go to xiaotong.com to find more of his Bitcoin parody songs. He is a singer-songwriter with a lot of talent and some hilarious and informative Bitcoin parodies, so check him out. Well, we're excited for this episode of the Crypto Show. It is Sunday, June 26, 2016. course, we always come to you here on Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com and check out the other wonderful programming available through that network. And of course, it is a listener-supported network, so help out with what you can in Bitcoin, FRNs, gold, or silver. And don't forget our sponsors, Brave New Books, bravenewbookstore.com, where you can find out, check out the events page for all the cool stuff going on at the bookstore, and the bitcoinbookstore.com, where over 50 titles on Bitcoin are available, and Hill Country Home Improvements for all your roofing needs. And of course, Crypto Compare with the Crypto Compare News Minute every Sunday. And before I get to our guests, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up that portion of this segment. Ethereum and the Dow price movements. Ethereum and Dow tokens have had a rocky ride as premia and discounts ebbed and flowed between the hopes of funds being returned to users.
And it's gone.
It's gone, and who knows if they'll come back. Ethereum itself for the week is up 12.6%, not bad, to $13.90, with Dow tokens up 8% against the dollar to 11 cents. Awesome. That's an ongoing story, of course, and we're actually going to be talking about that in the second hour with a couple of our guests, including Dances with Bitcoins, otherwise known as Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factum.
Good to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Brian. Also, Scrooge McAltcoin, otherwise known as Daniel Krawitz, is also going to join us in studio for the second hour to discuss DAO and related crypto
Two nerdy
stuff.
dudes who both got their Bitcoin name from the Crypto Show.
Yeah, that's true, basically, and they're proud of it. We also have Christopher David, of course, of Arcade City.
I want a nickname.
You want to? I thought Christopher David was your nickname.
Oh.
And your real name is Martian, and it's unpronounceable with the human tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We should give him a nickname. We'll have one by the end of the show.
We'll have one.
And I'm pretty positive you'll hate it.
All right.
Well, let's get to our guest. I'm really excited to have our guest, first guest back on. He's been on the show many times, and he is responsible for some of the awesome stuff that happens in the anarchist world, including Anarchapulco. It's Jeff Berwick. He is a Canadian entrepreneur, libertarian, and anarcho-capitalist activist. In 2009, he founded the Dollar Vigilante. He also founded what is arguably the world's most popular anarcho-capitalist podcast, Anarchist, in 2012.
Anarchast, dude. Say it right.
How did I say it?
Anarchist.
Anarchast. Thank you.
He's got automatic spell check on his voice.
Where do I get that? Where do I download that? I need that. He has interviewed presidential candidates, pop stars, and the world's leading libertarian anarchist thinkers, including John McAfee and Right Said Fred, singer Richard Fairbrass. I want to get him on. He's also the second best white Canadian rapper from the 80s. I bet he never gets tired of that. Jeff Berwick, welcome back to the Crypto Show.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you on. We really appreciate your time. A lot to talk to you about tonight, Jeff. Starting out, though, I spoke to you off air about something a little personal, although you've been sharing it on Facebook. You've been helping your mother with some medical issues, and interestingly enough, you basically there was a market improvement once she went from the Canadian healthcare system to the Mexican one. And just for a minute, do you want to comment on the potentially drastic differences between those two systems?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually been a bit of a wake-up call for me just dealing with all this stuff to see how crazy it all is in Canada, which is where the U.S. is going with its Obamacare now, unfortunately. So my mom actually, she doesn't read my stuff. She doesn't even know what I do. She has no idea whatsoever. But unfortunately, she doesn't read it because I've been very anti-vaccinations for a long time, ever since I started researching them years ago. And she took the flu shot on the advice of her doctor, who she can only get in to see once or twice a year in Canada and has to wait months to get in to see him. And about 5 years ago, she went in to see him, and he said, "Oh, you should really take this flu shot, which we're selling." And she took it, and the next day she couldn't really walk, and it's been kind of downhill for her ever since then. And I've been trying to convince her to get out of Canada because I'd call her, I'd go see her sometimes, and I'd say, "So what's going on?" She's like, "Oh, I have this problem, that problem." I'm like, "Well, where are the doctors?" She's like, "Well, I have an appointment in about 4 months." And I was like, "What? Well, just come to Mexico because we can just walk right in and get you looked at." And she put it off, and then she ended up in the hospital. She fell down, and then she kind of broke her knee, and then she was put into, I guess in Canada, when they don't want to keep you in the hospital, but you can't really go home, they put you into like these sort of care homes, which you have to pay for, which is kind of funny because that's the whole thing. I thought about Canadian healthcare; it's all free, but she's paying $2,000 a month, and it was literally an insane asylum. I was shocked when I walked in. It was people screaming, crying, throwing things. And I was like, "Mom, we have to get you out of here." And she's like, "Well, I'm not sure." And finally I talked her into it. So I got her down to Mexico last week. And as soon as we got here, we just went right to the doctor. He was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe all the crap they have her on up there." And he switched some stuff, and he's like, "This is crazy, all this stuff." And basically what I realized was rather than dealing with her problems, they were just giving her more and more medications just to kind of subdue her. So she was on all these crazy medications. So we brought her to the doctor. Then we came back home here, and then we had a doctor come in for the last 2 days to our house, which is very nice and easy. It cost for the last 2 days about $600 total, including all the medication. She's been on like IVs and all kinds of stuff trying to get her back to being healthy. And so yeah, she's already feeling much better. It's only been a few days, and so yeah, that's a warning to Americans. That's where Obamacare is headed. This socialized healthcare. There's that saying: if you think the medical system's bad, just wait till it's free. That's exactly why. In the U.S., they've actually got even worse. They actually make Americans pay massive amounts for it. I just read recently that many Americans, it's like more than 30 or 40% of their total income of what they have expendable money available to spend is spent just on this medical care that they're supposedly getting. That goes up. I think it's going up another 10 or 20 or 30% in some states this year again. So the U.S. is even worse. They've got the sort of socialized healthcare, but you have to pay a ton for it. It's sort of like fascio communist healthcare in the U.S. and the USSA, whereas here in Mexico, it's mostly a private market, so it works really well.
Yeah, and basically it's the worst of both worlds in the United States, and people don't quite get that when they make the comparison. They make this fake comparison of free market America to socialized Canada or Europe, and it's not quite that simple. But even even if it was free market here, that there's so many problems with the socialized system in Canada that people just don't want to recognize, and we are going that direction in the United States. And it's telling, like Danny mentioned off air, a lot of Canadians will take medical tours to the U.S. to save money or to get procedures that they otherwise have to wait.
Or buy cigarettes, because the cigarette tax is extremely high there.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Because,
gasoline, they'll come across the border to buy their gas.
Everything's more expensive. And then, of course, Americans will go to Mexico for the same thing, for cheaper medical care, because, as you said, it's mostly private, relatively free market, and the different shows and the prices and stuff.
Of course, I mean, I'm saying that I lived in the supreme socialist city of America, right on the border of Canada, which is
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah, right.
So if you're sneaking into the USSA to get cheaper gas, that's pretty bad.
I know, no kidding. Well, anyway, I appreciate you sharing that about your mom. Is she doing better these days?
Yeah, she's a lot better already. Just the food they were even serving her in this insane asylum she was in, it was all gray. It was unbelievable. She was even telling me, and she was in there in the wintertime, and she's in northern Canada, a place called Edmonton. And she was like, they don't turn the heat on at night. And it's like, well, it's minus 40 outside. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to get you out of there. And we were paying like thousands of dollars a month for her to be in this in asylum without any sort of real care. It was absolutely unbelievable. And within a few days, she's looking much better already. And just, getting some sun down here. That's another big thing. They don't get much sun up there, and that's one of the most important things for health, including your mood as well. And so she's a lot better already in a few days.
That's excellent. Glad to hear it. Thanks for sharing that story. I just want to illustrate the fact that another very real example of how people suffer under socialism and their lives are improved under free markets. Because again, like socialism, just like there were bread lines in the Soviet Union, there are lines, if you will, or rationing of care waiting for treatment. And even if you eventually get it, you might be dead by that point under a socialized system. So anyway, thanks for sharing that. Let's switch gears. We've got a minute and a half left till break. But I want to talk about, amongst other things, Brexit. Of course, as everyone is bound to be aware at this point, that is the departure of the United Kingdom from the European Union.
Is that where the redcoats shunned off their new king?
Similar, hopefully. I mean, shunning off.
Did they not learn anything a couple hundred years ago?
People repeat history because they never learned from it, unfortunately. Well, we've got about a minute left. I guess let's save it till the other side so we don't get interrupted by the break. But we are talking with Jeff Berwick, again, the founder of DollarVigilante.com. Go there for some really great up-to-the-minute news analysis and market analysis. Jeff's been right on a lot of market moves when it comes to gold, Bitcoin, stocks, currencies, and a whole lot of stuff. And
I've actually seen some of his newsletter subscribers recently claiming that they made quite a bit of money on the Dollar Vigilante Facebook page.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because I noticed some of his calls a while back and they came through. And of course, Anarchast, really the best anarchist podcast out there. He's got some incredible guests, and Jeff is a great interviewer. So check all that out, and we'll be right back with Jeff Berwick and of course Brian Deary and Christopher David of Arcade City. We'll talk about Brexit and some other stuff on the other side. So stay tuned, guys.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray, mace, cuffs, tasers, and glocks. They like serial killers acting out subliminal.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show. This is Sunday, June 26, 2016, and we're going to come back with a Crypto Compare News Minute before we get back to our guest. Coin, Q-U-O-I-N-E, I don't know how you pronounce it, raises $20 million. The Singapore-based Bitcoin exchange Coin has raised $20 million after gaining a funding round last December of $2 million. The round will see the company shift its HQ, headquarters that is, from Singapore to Tokyo as the exchange has gained major traction in the market after a lull in trading and vacuum left by the Mt. Gox debacle in early 2014. And that was a Crypto Compare News Minute. We'll have more throughout the show. And let's get back to our guest, Jeff Berwick, of course, founder of DollarVigilante.com and the host of Anarchast. And Jeff, I guess let's talk about what's kind of been on everybody's mind when it comes to world news lately. Brexit, of course, that's the UK referendum voting to leave the European Union. I guess tell us your opinion about this. Did you kind of see this coming yourself? And is this good for the UK? What's your opinion?
It's definitely good for the UK, but I definitely didn't see it coming. I've had to reanalyze everything over the last few days because we essentially expect them to always do. None of these things happen by accident. They even with the Scottish referendum, for example, it was very obvious. There was so much evidence that there was so much tampering. The polling coming out was showing that Scotland wanted to separate from the UK, and then it lost. And we've seen that numerous times in modern history, including even the 2000 election with the hanging chads with Al Gore and George Bush. They really wanted Bush in there to be in there when they did their 9/11 terrorist attack, false flag. And so I was really expecting them to do the same. It was actually Stalin who said, it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes. And actually another fascist, communist, terrorist dictator, it was FDR, who said that what did he had a good quote about what
it's nothing in politics happens by accident.
Hey, you read my mind.
Yeah, no, I knew that's where you were going because it's one of my favorite quotes. If it happens, you can be sure it was planned that way, which is crazy to hear.
Yeah, so after it was allowed to go through, I had to quickly reanalyze everything and figure out what's going on because they would not have let this happen unless they wanted it to happen. So what I've quickly realized in the last few days, and if you look back at it, you even look at George Soros, he was heavily positioned in gold. He moved all of his stuff into gold and into shorting the market just a few weeks ago. He's very, very heavily connected. If you look at David Cameron even, he was supposed to call for this Brexit. He was elected on the promise that he would promise as usual that they would call a referendum in 2017. But all of a sudden they called in 2016, which makes no sense if you think about it because that's a huge risk for David Cameron because he's on the Remain side. And as we saw, he had to resign right after the vote. So why would he move it up a year? So there's a lot of very interesting things going on here. And actually, we realized right after the Brexit vote on Friday was a massive collapse. It was the 8th biggest collapse in history, I believe, for one day on the Dow. It was brutal in many other markets, including the London Exchange, of course. We didn't realize until afterwards that was exactly 7 years, 7 months, 7 days, or 7 weeks and 7 days since the last collapse on September 29, 2008. So we've been following this numerology that Christine Lagarde has been talking about. Many of these elites follow. And so that ties very much into the Shemitah. So this actually fell on the exact 7 years, 7 months, 7 weeks, 7 days from the last collapse, was this collapse that happened on Friday. So
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I watched your video too. You go through and show like a calculator online where it definitively proves that it was exactly those 777 time period after that collapse, which is crazy. And the Christine Lagarde, just to clarify for people, she was she a central banker for the what was
She's
her
the head of the
again?
IMF?
Head of the IMF, that's what it was. But she had this is not just Jeff's pulling numerology out of somewhere. This is the head of the IMF having a whole speech about numerology related to financial markets. So this is not out of nowhere. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and the magic number 7 was what her speech was all about. And that's actually what got me partly looking into all this stuff, which led me down the road to discovering the Shemitah cycle. We're currently in a Jubilee year, which ends on October 2nd of this year. And I've been saying all year that they're going to plan some sort of major crisis collapse events coming into October 2nd of this year. And so what I've realized after this Brexit vote is that they actually allowed it to happen. I think to some extent what's going on is that people are waking up and the elites are realizing this. And so what they're saying is we can't hold back this tide of anger forever. Let's let them think they're winning, by let them win this Brexit vote, and then we'll use that as the excuse to collapse the entire economic and financial and monetary system, which actually Alan Greenspan just came out today and said this is going to cause complete collapse. Brexit is the cause. So they're going to use this as the reason, I believe, and we're still just a few days after it happening here, so things can obviously change. But I think that's what's going to happen. Now we're seeing other secessionist movements happening all throughout Europe. We're seeing almost every country in Europe saying they now want to secede, which is great. I'm a huge believer in secession. I always say if at first you don't secede, try again. And I want to see it secede until we have 7 billion governments on earth and 7 billion sovereign individuals. So I'm in favor of all these secessionist movements, but I think they're using it as their reason, because everyone knows this whole system's going to collapse. This is just obvious. So many people have come out and even said it in the last few months, including George Soros, including Jim Rogers, Alan Greenspan, the IMF, the World Bank, the Royal Bank of Scotland, numerous others. Stanley Druckenmiller, billionaire, came out and said this is all going to collapse. The chief economist of the Bank of International Settlements said this is a debt jubilee and it's going to end up probably with complete devastation. This has all been said, but it's not really covered in the mainstream media.
And he even used the word jubilee, right?
Yeah, he even used the word jubilee. So there's something to this stuff. I've been probably one of the biggest researchers looking into this, and it's amazing. The further down the rabbit hole you go, the more you find. But I think what they might be doing, and this is speculation, of course, is to use this Brexit movement to say this is what caused all the collapse. And so they're going to cause all the collapse now. It'll probably happen all throughout the summer, in my opinion. I think August is going to be a massive month, in my opinion. And then what their plan is, if I'm right on speculation here, is to make things so bad that everyone begs for some sort of new order to come in, and a new central bank for the world, a new government for the world, essentially the UN, new worldwide taxation system. They'll be begging for it because they're going to make it so bad on people. So that's my speculation. I could be wrong, of course. We're just a few days in here, but that's what I'm thinking is the plan. And so I was blindsided by the vote going through, but as soon as it went through, I started to reanalyze everything, and I began to realize that's probably they're doing it as to make that the excuse for why everything's going to start to collapse now.
So if we know this, how do I get my hands on some nice juicy SDR tokens that will be the next money?
Well, actually, they don't really have them out in circulation yet, but I've started to notice in Europe, they're starting to put the price of SDRs on many things, including airline tickets. If you look closely at your airline ticket in Europe now, they'll say the price in SDR, and then they'll tell you what that means in euros. So they're slowly moving it out. I don't know if it's going to be successful. If we're successful on our side with things like Bitcoin, we could just get rid of all of these systems and move on to a great new free market system with nothing but Bitcoin in Arcade City in every town, and all those sort of things everywhere. But if we're not successful, it's going to be absolute tyranny, and that's what they plan to bring in. So this is what it's coming down to. Most people have no idea this is going on. Most people are just watching the NBA playoffs and watching American Idol and just have no clue what's going on. But we're in a massive struggle between complete freedom and complete tyranny, and it's coming down to the final stretch here in probably the next few months and definitely the next few years.
Sorry, Jeff. What were you saying? I was watching the Kardashians. I was distracted. No, I actually 100% agree. And even if you're not specifically right, which I think you probably will be about Brexit precipitating the collapse and being the excuse for the collapse, they want a collapse. It's been the engineering for which has been in the works for years, if not decades. And they want a global currency, the SDR, or as John Maynard Keynes called it, the Bancor. This has been discussed even back at the original international financial architecture of Bretton Woods back in the 40s. So this stuff is a long time coming. They have a long term perspective on these plans, and you're right, people are completely ignorant, yet all these plans are out there if you can find the right places to look for them, and they're admitted by the elites. But we're coming to break. We're going to talk more with Jeff Berwick about Brexit, Bilderberg, Anarchapulco, and some other stuff, so stay tuned.
Stroke. It's the third leading cause of death in the U.S. behind heart disease and cancer. Do you know the telltale signs? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back with information that could save your life or the life of someone you love.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
A stroke occurs when part of your brain is deprived of oxygen because of a blocked or broken blood vessel. The brain will start to die unless you get fast emergency medical treatment, so it's important to know these warning signs. Sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body. Sudden confusion or trouble speaking and understanding. Sudden trouble seeing out of one or both eyes. sudden trouble walking, dizziness or loss of balance and coordination, and sudden severe headache with no known cause. If you or a loved one experiences any of these symptoms, call 911. Fast treatment saves lives. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at catherinealbrecht.com.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power.
Take back the power. That's hopefully what the Brexit situation reflects, although as we've been discussing with Jeff Berwick, that may only be a surface appearance, partly real. I mean, I think, as Jeff mentioned, there's a sort of a raising of consciousness around the world where some people at least, are waking up to the tyranny that's all around us.
I'm hoping the domino falls in Texas. I already see the hashtag everywhere, Texit.
Texit, I know. That was like almost immediate after the vote started happening. No, and hopefully it raises people's awareness of their individual sovereignty, and if they can't get that far, at least the sovereignty of individual countries relative to the supranational organizations that in world government that they want to implement, like the EU. But at the same time, it's quite possible the powers that be, smart as they are using the situation to, if anything, not just precipitate some economic collapse that's going to happen anyway, but to use it as an excuse to blame sovereignty and freedom movements for the collapse, which, of course, the average people these days, being what they are, will easily buy into if they're fed it properly by the propagandists. Well, Jeff, let me see where. 1 second.
Well, let me just say one thing on that since you brought it up. I think a big part of what's going on is that people are finally starting to turn off their television programming, and it's called programming for a reason. It is literally propaganda. And we've seen in the last 5 years a massive move. I remember 10 years ago, most people still watch TV to find out the news. That's not the news, of course, but that's what they would look to find out what's going on. Now almost everyone goes on the internet to find out what's going on. And there was a recent poll, and this poll has been going down every year now for years. It's gone down to a low of 5% of Americans actually believe what they see on mainstream media is true now. So there's 95% of people have generally woken up. So they realize what they're getting from CNN or CNBC or any of those channels is not really the truth at all, in many cases at all. And so this is precipitating a massive change. This is why the elites are getting very nervous, very scared. And even I went to Bilderberg this year for my second year in Dresden, Germany, and all the headlines when we showed up of the few media people who were covering it was, this is the most nervous Bilderberg ever. And actually, last year I didn't have hardly any problems at all. I knew some journalists did get harassed by the police, but this year we were just constantly harassed. We were constantly being arrested. They were in my room at one point looking through my computer. They were just constantly harassing us. They didn't want us anywhere near the place talking about it. So I was incredibly nervous this year. And I think the reason is they know they're losing control. And that's why, people who went to Bilderberg this year, people like Henry Kissinger, these people have been doing these evil, horrible acts now for decades and decades and have gotten away with it mostly because of the mainstream media. And I forget who it was who said it at, I believe it was a past Bilderberg event or an event like it, maybe the CFR, who said, I think it was Rockefeller, who said, I want to thank all the mainstream media. We couldn't have done our plans without you. And even at this Bilderberg, they invited a number of mainstream media, including the Financial Times, The Economist, all those sort of people. None of them talk about what happens there, of course. And they bring people in like Peter Thiel, and I think, from Google as well, Eric Schmidt. And I think they're like, how do we make sure that we can control what people are thinking? And of course, Google and Facebook and all that are already doing that. They're shutting down so much content that has anything against what the mainstream elite narrative is wanted to be. But they're having trouble controlling it. And even John Kerry said, I think last year, this little thing called the internet is making it hard to govern. And govern, of course, is a synonym for control. And govern is control, meant is mind. The Latin word is mind. It's mind control. So they're having a really hard time. And so they're getting quite desperate, and people are waking up. So that's the good side to this Brexit thing. This is a major change. So many people, when I was just looking on Facebook and Twitter and all that about Brexit, they were all like down with the New World Order, down with the financial elites, the banksters, all that kind of stuff. So people are aware of that. 10 years ago, they weren't. Most people didn't even know what the Federal Reserve was until probably Ron Paul in 2008 when he started talking about end the Fed. So this is a evolution, I call it, not a revolution, but an evolution that has been happening and probably in about the last 10 years that they're having a really hard time controlling. So that's why I think they let Brexit go through, because if they once again didn't, all the alternative media like ourselves and many others, Luke Rudowski of We Are Change, Dan Dix of Press for Truth, James Corbett, so many great researchers and investigative journalists would expose it so quickly, and they'd get even more problems. So they're like, let's let this one go through, but then let's cause so much chaos afterwards that we'll tell everyone that's why all the chaos happened, is because Britain left the EU. So I think that's what's going on, but it's definitely interesting. People are waking up very rapidly now, and there's going to be a lot of changes in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
kind of why we continue to have mass shootings,
Well, those are all
the
done
FBI.
by the government, right?
Yeah, I mean, the FBI is out there, inflaming people to go out and shoot.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, that's another thing too. Is I think you're right. People are waking up, but on the flip side, they're coming back hard with the propaganda with things like these mass killings. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know what happened in Orlando, but I am a rational skeptic, and that means I don't just buy what the mainstream media tells me happened. Especially considering how many inconsistencies are in the story and how many ties to the government and G4S, that largest security company, both the shooter and his dad had. So, I mean, it's definitely true. People are waking up, but they're pushing back hard with questionable stories that are meant to get us riled up and loving our servitude and pushing for things like gun control. So it's definitely scary to see the pushback. But you're right. I mean, if they hadn't let Brexit go through, that would have made the narrative of the alternative media, which is the truth, that much more plausible that things are rigged. But when you see Brexit go through, it allows some people to say, well, it's not rigged. The people still have a choice. And, it makes the fight for the truth just a little bit more difficult for those who are doing it. Well, so what other dominoes do you see falling with Brexit? I mean, we've had turmoil in the stock market. Gold and silver have had some positive side because of this. But what do you see as the next potential phase? And do you see also, one thing that we often kind of worry about with economic collapse is war. Do you see that as a possibility too?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the financial side, Friday, of course, was a complete bloodbath in most markets in everything except for gold, silver, and Bitcoin, which is mostly all of our holdings. So we did well once again. Right now, it's Sunday evening, and I've seen the futures for the European markets. The lowest one is down 5% of the futures. The highest one is down 12%. So Monday is going to be a continuation. When you have a massive shift like this, with the British pound down 10% overnight, with so many stock markets crashing, you're going to see reverberations for quite a period of time as everyone adjusts to what's going on. So this is definitely not over. And then if we're going to see numerous other secessionist movements throughout Europe, we're just going to see crisis after crisis. And I think that's exactly what they kind of want to see at this point. So they can blame all the problems that they created. This has all been created by the central banks and the governments for decades now, and especially since the beginning of 2000. 2008 was a near complete financial collapse, and all they've done since then is print more money just to make it look like it's still alive. The U.S. federal government has actually doubled its debt in the last 8 years. So since Barack Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, has been in office, he's doubled the national debt over every other president before him, all the way back to the beginning. So this thing's out of control. They know it's all going to collapse. They're just printing money until they can get to the new system, and it's going to come into a major collapse. So that's what they want. And so we're going to see major crises and problems. And definitely stick with your precious metals, stick with things like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been so interesting, especially with what's going on with Ethereum and the Dow. I love that cartoon. You guys have probably seen it, where the Ethereum guy is holding all this money. He says, "Look at all the money I have," and the Dow guy says, "Here, let me hold it," and then he throws it in the fire. And then there's the guy to the side with the Bitcoin shirt, just with a box of popcorn, just like enjoying the show. So Bitcoin is definitely, it's the most. Definitely the most advanced cryptocurrency out there. So all these other ones are just sort of competing to be second best, really. So stick with Bitcoin. If you want to get into other things, look into them for sure. There's lots of exciting things in the crypto space. I compare the crypto space to about 1994 and the internet, maybe 1995 now. Most people still don't know much about it, but it's really going to start catching on, and it'll do incredibly well, just like the internet stocks from 1994 to 2000 before the bubble burst. So we're going to see a lot. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crisis after crisis. It's not going to be boring. I haven't been bored for the last year. It's been just crazy already in the last year, and it's going to get even worse. I'm just hunkered down here, getting ready. And just every few hours, something pretty big is happening that most people don't know about, including that right after Brexit, the very next morning, the UK Central Bank announced that they were
hold
going
that thought. We're coming to break. We'll be right back.
Okay. Easy.
Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show. It is June 26, 2016. We're talking with Jeff Berwick, the host of Anarchast and the founder of DollarVigilante.com. I pronounced it correctly this time. Thank you, Danny. Jeff, you were saying something before the break that we got interrupted by. Do you want to continue with that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that so many things get lost in all this craziness going on. And one thing that hardly anyone noticed, and actually it took a subscriber of mine to mention it to me. I didn't even see it. It was very little coverage of it. But the very morning after Brexit, the UK central bank came out and said they're going to put 240 or 250 billion pounds into the financial sector. So essentially, in one way, this was a bailout for the UK banks that was completely hidden. So this is another thing that they might have been doing is they couldn't really just give the banks another $250 billion again for no reason. So they kind of needed a reason to do this, and that was done, and hardly anyone knows anything about it. So that's why I'm saying it's just crazy. You have to pay attention if you want to know what's going on. There's so much going on, you can't even keep up.
There's so much. You're right. There's so much going on. If you just pay attention, it's not explicitly stated by the news, but you can connect the dots very easily and say, okay, well, this just happened with this event, and there's got to be a correlation. They're printing all this money to bail out the banks, and Brexit is used as a cover. I mean, and people really need to look into this kind of stuff because it happens all the time. Even with, like, say, 9/11, they printed a bunch of money, a lot of which went, untraceable, to shore up the economy after that event. And a lot of that was just a similar round of bailouts, for the big banks. Well, we've been talking about Shemitah and your predictions, which, last year you had the Shemitah prediction. And of course this year is the Jubilee year, and you've been really spot on both times. But, just for those who aren't familiar, who may be new listeners to our show or to your stuff, just real quick, go ahead and tell us about Shemitah and also the Harbinger book. I think that was a big inspiration for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I read the book The Harbinger by Jonathan Cahn a few years ago, and I read it because I was really interested. I'm a huge 9/11 buff. I'm constantly looking into what happened then. Obviously, it wasn't what the U.S. government said it was at all. It's not even physically possible. And he wrote a book that had amazing correlations to biblical prophecy in it. And I was like, whoa, I haven't read the Bible since I was a little kid, and it didn't really mean anything to me at that time. And got me actually reading the Bible again. And he mentioned in the book the Shemitah. And Shemitah is actually something written about in the Bible. It's mostly in the Torah about every 7 years, God says that you're supposed to have a year of rest. It's supposed to be a year of sort of washing away of things. And this has gotten lost over time. And it's actually not on the Gregorian calendar. It's on the biblical calendar. So it happens on different dates all the time. But it happened last year. And actually in the book, he mentioned that in 2008, on the exact end date of the Shemitah year, on September 29, 2008, the stock market, the Dow Jones fell. It was the biggest crash of all time, 777 points, which was an interesting number. And actually on that day, the bell for the first time didn't ring on the New York Stock Exchange when they opened it. All kinds of just incredibly weird and crazy sounding things, but they all tie in. And then the one before that, the Shemitah before that, was 2011. It was actually September 17th, which actually was the day they reopened the New York Stock Exchange after 9/11, which was all done by the same old people who were running the banks and all those sort of things. And that was the biggest market crash in history to that date. So he had nailed this sort of occult timeline that perhaps the elites are following. So I followed it quite a bit. And last year, it fell in September of last year. And actually, the third quarter of last year was the worst quarter in worldwide stock market since the last Shemitah. So once again, it happened. But there was one difference with this one. Every seventh Shemitah, so every 7 years is a Shemitah. Every seventh Shemitah, which is 49 years, there's something called the Jubilee year, or you can even call it the Super Shemitah. It's sort of like an extension of what happened in the Shemitah happens in the Jubilee year. We're currently in that now. It started in September of last year. It ends October 2nd of this year. Interestingly enough, on October 3rd is the day they're going to add the Chinese yuan to the SDR. So all these coincidences, after so many coincidences, you start to think there's got to be something to this stuff. So I've been following it, and this year I've been predicting there's going to be massive chaos and crisis. We're seeing that with Brexit now. You mentioned war earlier. We're on the edge of World War III. No one's talking about it. I think that might be the next step that they might enter into. It looks like that's what they're planning, probably for August, September of this year. It looks like you've got world armies around the world all aggregating all around Syria right now. They're getting ready for some sort of major conflict. It probably all planned. There's lots of stuff going on. For people interested in it, just go to surviveshemitah.com, and I have our video there, our most recent one. We've actually done a series of 4. One of them went very viral. Many of them are quite viral. You just go to Survive Shemitah. That's SHEMITAH.com, and you can check that out. And again, most of our predictions have essentially come true based on this timeline.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. I mean, whatever you believe, this stuff has some real power to it. I don't know why, but it reminds me of in Revelation, John has a vision of a 200 million man army coming from the east into Israel. And he's shocked. Like, he can't believe the size of the army, because that was literally the size of the whole earth population back then. And the angel has to like reassure him, no, this is really the number. But anyway, my point being, there's some really fascinating correlations between biblical prophecy and esoteric things that conform to reality of late. And, maybe it's coincidence, maybe not, but you should definitely check it out. Well, and hopefully it doesn't lead to war, but as inevitably as these things do historically, that's the final outcome. But well, let's switch gears real quick. We only have a few minutes left. I do want to get your opinion real quick. What do you think is the effect on Bitcoin of the upcoming halving?
It's going to be interesting. The last halving, I believe, was 2012. So Bitcoin was very small at that time. It was a very small ecosystem. So it's really hard, but it took off quite a bit after that halving. It's really hard to say. You're basically just trying to predict what could happen. It looks like Bitcoin's tripled since last summer. I was really heavy on it. I said this $200 level this is definitely the time to get in. I couldn't see it going any lower than that. Since then, it's gone up very regularly. It even went over $750, I think, just a few days ago. It's now down to about $650. It definitely could affect it. I'm actually not super techie when it comes to Bitcoin and the mining and things like that. But that is one of about 4 different reasons that I've said that Bitcoin is just going to continue to go higher, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the fact that it has more or less tripled since then means that the halving, even though it reduces the reward for miners, it still makes it equally, if not actually more profitable, since the price compensates for it. So that's potentially a good thing going forward. Well, we have about 4 minutes left. I want to hear about your experiences at Bilderberg. We touched upon that lately and or earlier in the show. And were there signs of Brexit? I think you kind of talked about that off air.
Yeah, actually, since Brexit happened, I've been meaning to go back and look at who attended Bilderberg. But the really interesting thing about Bilderberg this year, and we were all confused about it, especially people like Dan Dix of Press for Truth, who's gone to it for the last 10 years. He was like, it's supposed to be in the U.S. this year. They always hold it in the U.S. On a presidential year. They also usually go back and forth between Europe and the U.S. or Canada every year. And last year was in Austria. So this year should have been in North America, but it was in Germany. And so I think definitely Europe was in the planning talks there this year more than anything. And I think looking back at it, probably this Brexit scheme or whatever they're planning for Brexit was probably a big part of it. So it was very interesting to see that. Of course, no one talked about it. There was no mainstream media there. We were the only independent journalists there. Myself, Luke Rudowski, Dan Dix, Lauren Southern was there from Rebel Media. InfoWars was there. And that was about it. Alex Poucher of AlexPoucher.com. And that was about it. And we were just essentially constantly being harassed by police, just under surveillance constantly. I felt like I was a celebrity or something. Just people just always around me, taking my picture, taking videos of me, accosting me, telling me, Jeff Berwick, you can't be around here. We know who you are, and all this sort of stuff. So, it's very interesting.
Wow, pretty incredible. Well, and can people find more about your experience at Bilderberg? We're a Dollar Vigilante?
Yeah, actually just go to YouTube and just look at our channel, which is just the Dollar Vigilante. If you go there, actually the big video I put out about it was Fear and Loathing at Bilderberg. If you just go to Dollar Vigilante, you can find it, and we've had a lot of that information there.
That's awesome. That's a great title for it.
Or
awesome.
Snapchat. A lot of it's on Snapchat on his, Luke Rudowski's and Dan Dix.
Check it out. I mean, they're all great guys, and it sounds like they had quite an experience. So, well, we got 2 minutes left. Jeff, I want to know about Anarchapulco. Is there going to be a third annual Anarchapulco?
Yes, there is. We actually I've been so busy that we haven't really gotten around to officially launching it yet, but we've decided now to officially launch it on July 4th to celebrate whatever July 4th is supposed to mean. But
it's Flag Day in Canada, right?
No, I don't know about that. July 1st is Canada Day. That's the day that the Canadians celebrate how enslaved they are by the Canadian government. So we're going to announce, it's actually, if you go to anarchapulco.com, we've just put up the speakers that we have so far, and we're still adding so many great speakers to the list. It's going to be February 23rd to 26th next year. It's going to be huge. You guys were there last year. You know how great it was. It's going to be probably twice as big next year. We're going to have 2 rooms. We're already expecting maybe even double the attendance next year just from what we're seeing. So we have
it was twice as big as the year before as well.
Yeah, it's this whole area, just like we said, everyone's waking up now, and people are starting to realize that voluntarism and narco-capitalism are the way to go. It's the only chance for humanity to survive with what's going on. So we've got a number of returning speakers. All the best returning speakers are coming back, including Larkin Rose, of course. We've got coming this year for sure. I've made sure this time, Jeffrey Tucker. We've got Lauren Southern, who I just spent time with at Bilderberg. She's actually quite amazing. I was really impressed by her at Bilderberg. Dan Dix and Luke were really putting their lives on the line and definitely their liberty on the line by doing the things they were doing, and she was right there with them. She's a young woman from Canada. She's got a huge following on Rebel Media, maybe because she's quite pretty, but she's also really smart and really amazing. She was just on European TV just shooting down some guy about gun control, saying he was a total Democrat guy.
Jeff, we're coming to break. Thank you so much, Jeff Berwick. Check out Anarchapulco, guys. Attend if you can. And thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Guys, welcome back to the second hour of the Crypto Show here on this lovely June 26, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and Crypto Compare with the Crypto Compare News Minute. I'm going to hold off on that for a moment. We're going to wrap up with our first guest, Jeff Berwick. We were kind of rudely interrupted by the break, but we are going to finish up talking about Anarchapulco. And I guess, Jeff, just continue with the list of speakers we can expect, and if we have any idea of how much it might cost this year and other relevant facts.
Sure. I should just say we weren't really interrupted. That's the sponsors who pay for the show. Very happy to be interrupted by them. Without them, the show wouldn't exist. That's capitalism. All right. So
I agree with that. I don't know. I was trying to go with the joke and I couldn't think of one. But anyway, go ahead. You're absolutely right.
So Anarchapulco, yeah, I know you agree with that, obviously. So Anarchapulco is going to be February 23rd to 26th next year. So it's going to be 4 days this year. We just have so many amazing speakers. We just couldn't pack them all in. We're going to have 2 rooms and 4 days this year. We're actually going to, there's going to be a lot of changes this year just to fit everything in. There's so many amazing people. Like, as I mentioned, Larkin Rose, Jeffrey Tucker, Lauren Southern. We're going to have Milo Yiannopoulos back from Breitbart. He's, hopefully he'll be a full ANCAP by next year. We pretty much got him 96% of the way so far. He just can't give up his love of military uniformed men, I think. That's the problem.
Probably nothing to do with his politics, more to do with other things, but yeah.
Yeah, probably.
What about James Corbett?
I just emailed him to see if he's going to come. He couldn't make it this year because he had a baby right at almost at the exact same time as Anarchapulco, but hopefully he can make it next year.
He's so
we're
selfish
gonna have,
like that.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't fight for freedom like us, you know. So then there's Roger Veers coming back, a great supporter of Anarchapulco. He's been so great. Dana Martin, who's so amazing with her peaceful parenting and unschooling stuff. Adam Kokesh is back, of course. Luke Radowski, Ken O'Keefe, Mark Victor's back. This year for artists, we've got Eric July and Backwards with their amazing song Statism, which has done really well. And we're probably going to be announcing a few other art acts as well. Zen Gardner, Max Egan are coming back. We've got Josie Wales, Josie the Outlaw. She's coming for her first time. Barry Cooper's back. He's an amazing guy. Sterling Lujan of the Psychologic Anarchist is an amazing thinker. He's coming. Sasha Daygame's back. He's a hilarious guy. Amanda Rockwitz, the Dragon Anarchist. We're going to have Dale Brown of threat management from Detroit. So that's going to be interesting, talking about private solutions for security. Stephanie Murphy of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Yeah, you're a compadre. Derek Brose is coming. That guy T, if you don't know him, he's hilarious. He's got a big following on YouTube. Dan Dix of Press for Truth, Lauren Rumpler. We're going to have Tim Moen, the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, is coming for his first time. We're going to have Carlos Morales, who's a great speaker about how horrible the child protection service is.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, we had him on the show. He's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to have Lauren Young. She's known as the Anarchist Girl on Facebook, got a huge following. She wants to actually do her speech in a bikini. That's going to be interesting. I'll enjoy it at least. Yeah. she asked if it was okay. I was like, well, actually, it's preferred. Then we have Edward Peter Stringham, a really interesting guy. Rosalind Ross, who's also another amazing person talking about peaceful parenting. And then the person you have right there in the studio, Christopher David of Arcade City. We're a huge fan of what he's doing. And I just interviewed him on Anarchast about a month ago and really impressed by him. So we invited him to come speak. And
he's now going by Snuggles.
Snuggles. Snuggles it is. Okay.
I'm a huge Stringham fan.
Oh, cool. So there you go. So yeah, we got a great lineup. I'm still adding probably a few more really big names. So it's just going to be absolutely amazing again next year.
We'll set up our little radio table and go for it again.
Well, we're exciting, and I'm gonna what do you call it? I'm gonna sew my passport to my chest so I can't lose it this year. Hopefully things will go better for me.
You might be able to put it on the blockchain. Who knows?
There you go. Well, even though I lost my passport, I had a great time. It was wonderful. Anarchapulco. Check it out. Is the website anarchapulco.com? I forget.
Yeah, but no one can spell it, so it's ANARCHAPULCO.com.
Yeah, I always want to put an O instead of that middle A. Exactly. Anarchapulco.com. Well, Jeff Berwick, it's so exciting that it's going to happen. You already have a ton of excellent guests lined up. Hopefully you can get James Corbett too, because I'm a big fan of his and I have yet to meet him. But we'll see. If not, we're still going to go, of course, and have a great time as we did last year. Any final thoughts, Jeff?
No, that's basically it. The pre-sales go on sale July 4th. We're going to have discounted tickets until probably, I think, August 1st. So check it out on July 4th. And you guys are going to have a discount code for your listeners that you might want to give out.
We'll use the same one, crypto, as we did years before.
Yeah, it makes sense. Might as well use the same one.
Yeah.
So use the code crypto if you want to get a discount. And look forward to seeing you guys down here.
Jeff, we're really excited. Thanks so much for your time.
But we're not driving.
We're not driving this year.
That's probably a good idea.
No, not this year.
We're flying.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, we really appreciate your time. It was a great interview, and we definitely look forward to seeing you in Anarchapulco. Jeff Berwick, dollarvigilante.com, anarchapulco.com, and, of course, check out his Anarchast. It's a great program. Jeff, we will see you next time.
All right. Adios, amigos.
Take care.
Bye.
Awesome. I love Jeff. He's a great guest. Great guy. That's racist, man. That's racist. I forgot to ask him if there's going to be another roast like last year. Well, I guess we'll find out when we go. Well, God, you love yourself too much.
I know. So before we get into the Dow and all that, let's get into what happened tonight and why the news people showed up and how it went.
Yeah. Well, what happened tonight was a cool event, and I think Snuggles, a.k.a. Christopher David, can best tell us about that. Go ahead, Snuggles.
Wait a minute. All right. Snuggles with ride shares.
Like dances with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I see. Fair enough.
Okay. Let's see. This was the launch event for the partnership between Arcade City and Unsung, an idea that grew on this show that I was trying to think of a good nickname for you, Danny. Like something that complements Snuggles, like Cuddles or something. Anyway,
that works.
Danny had the idea kind of bringing Jason and I together and having this homeless outreach charity that pairs excess food with restaurants and grocery stores with drivers to get them delivered to homeless people who are hungry and in need. And kind of the limiting factor in that growth had been lack of drivers, and we have here an abundance of drivers. So made a Facebook group and got a lot of interest expressed among the Arcade City network. Jason and his lead developer, Steven, came to town for a few days and just been doing a lot of planning, brainstorming, and setting up some logistics here, and did a kickoff party this evening. And we had invited drivers and anyone else who wanted to bring by non-perishable food and socks to do the first delivery tonight. So that happened. And, cool to see KI come out and kind of cover that. But, we had maybe about 20 people come by and bring donations. We kind of sorted it, cataloged it, split it up into maybe 20 or 30 kind of packages of different stuff all together. Drivers took them out. Some people are going to be delivering them over the next few days, but just checking my Facebook feed and seeing, one driver say, I grabbed 6 packages. I just, delivered 4 packages to 4 different people. I'm looking for 2 more. It's great to see that this has gone from idea to execution in 2 weeks.
Literally, the party wasn't even over. I mean, people were still here, and they were already out on the street delivering the packages.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we have successfully had people tonight deliver packages.
Multiple.
That's great.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, it's not just talk anymore. It is real life execution. It's been done. Homeless people have been fed, and that's great. And people, do we know how much
food and socks? Lots of socks.
Socks are pretty important. Do we know how much was donated tonight, or any rough idea?
We don't know. I mean, probably $500 worth or more. And this was small. I mean, obviously an awesome start, but we think this is going to grow, especially once we get the word out that we are able to process donations and get them out, especially without waiting for anything. We would just in and out, and within a span of a couple hours. So.
Well, and speaking of donations real quick, I mean, can people not just donate food? Is there a way for them to donate money that can also then, obviously be used to buy food for this project? Or
for people who want to donate, probably the best thing to do is to go through the Unsung website. They've got a fundraiser that they're kind of getting the app built, which is going to let us kind of serve the most number of people. But if people are in Austin and they want to get money donated, we had some people just kind of bring cash by, and that cash will go to purchasing food that gets out to people. We don't really have a system for that set up in place yet, but I mean, someone could drop off cash here, I guess, in just the same way that they drop off items.
Right. I mean, primarily we want food and items dropped off, but I mean, some people might prefer to do.
Passengers. A passenger could bring a pair of socks and give it to a driver, and then the driver would hand it off to someone else later, or some canned food.
That's true.
The driver could accumulate several items and then give them away, whatever. But
there's a lot of options and flexibility here.
That gives the passengers the ability to give and feel the same way.
Yeah. And it's as flexible as people's creativity with it. If you, whether you're a passenger or driver, whether it's canned food or socks or other items that you think are useful for the homeless.
I was mentioning to him earlier that my friend did homeless karaoke, where he would take out socks and tall boy beers, and he would pay homeless people to sing like Rolling Stones songs. He'd give them a tall boy and a bag of socks, and they loved it. They would have fun, and it's all over YouTube. Go out there and just look up homeless karaoke.
Yeah, and
it's hilarious.
And half of it is too is it's not just feeding the homeless, but something I had experience with recently, where when you help somebody who's in need, there's sort of a spiritual improvement on the part of the giver and the receiver. In other words, it's not just that they now have more food and they're that much closer to surviving or continue to survive, but they get a good sense of that humanity and altruism and the brotherhood of man kind of thing that needs to happen more often, and to build positive attitudes and to help people learn to appreciate their fellow man and to help them. You know what I'm saying? And I think you get the point. But anyway, and I think it's really cool that Jason King had this idea. When you hear about Unsung, you think, oh, that's brilliant. I could have thought of that. But
you didn't.
But you did it. Exactly. He did. And it's a great idea. And it seems so simple, and it is. And that's the beauty of it. And it's matched up with, not just new peer-to-peer technologies, but new peer-to-peer platforms like Arcade City that have so much potential for making this happen because of their huge driver base, and not just driver base, but community and community mindedness that is so obviously apparent when you start to interact with Arcade City on any level.
The most beautiful thing is that all these are just your average Joes that, a month ago were driving for Uber, and the state didn't really bother them, but now the state took away their job, and they've kind of become anarchists and don't really know it.
Am I right? We'll make them know. We'll make them realize it soon enough. Well, we have 30 seconds left, but have we gotten any specific food providers on yet, or is it still in the sort of open donation phase?
I thought we had Wheatsville Co-op.
Well, we're working on that.
I know Jason's had some productive conversations while here. I think we're just kind of getting some of the basic infrastructure in place, and some of that stuff will come in the next few weeks.
Right, and the basic infrastructure will help facilitate getting people on board, like restaurants and stuff. We'll be right back, guys, with Christopher David, Arcade City, Dances with Bitcoin, and Scrooge McCall.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Show you right.
All right, guys, welcome back to the third to last segment of the Crypto Show.
This is Crypto? Okay.
I think so.
I was trying to remember when we were on.
I was too busy watching the Kardashians. I could have thought of something better.
There's another song just like this one.
Which one?
Did we not play this?
Is that a song?
No.
For the love.
Full effect. Full effect. Full effect. Full effect. Full effect.
You are free to leave, if you know what I mean. To all the chump second guns at the green machine, I rock the mic, and I spot the light. And my homeboy Shammy can go all night. Throw down, mow down, showdown. Your name to me is just another pronoun. Hum drum, your beat don't swing it like static, like all the other suckers that claim. I'm coming straight from the north, and I'm right on course, and it'll knock you back with the boom of my fourth. But don't slouch, they stand erect, and the Jeff Steel crew is in full effect.
Cool.
You may hear that live at Anarchapulco. That's
I was going to say that's the group that Jeff just mentioned, right? Was coming. That's awesome.
No, that's him when he was the number 2 white rapper in Canada.
Oh no, that's okay. That's right. Oh, that's so crazy. That was surprisingly
well produced, or
at least well produced. There's a little talent there. I was impressed.
He actually did that. So at the last Anarchapulco, I think he did that at that dinner that we were at.
Oh, he did. That's right. I think right. Yeah. He was.
It's hard to know what was really going on at that dinner. Everybody was like rolling joints at the table. We're in a restaurant and they're just rolling weed while they're eating their meal.
It was a pretty interesting roast / dinner, and you won't get to experience unless you go to Anarchapulco next year. So I'm sure there'll be a similar event at next year's event. So be sure to sign up, and we'll have a discount code for Anarchapulco tickets through the Crypto Show. So stay tuned for that as well. Well, real quick before we get to our next guest. the Crypto Compare News Minute. Dutch Central Bank cryptocurrency. The Dutch Central Bank have shown their results of 2 cryptocurrency tests to explore the use of the Bitcoin blockchain. The 2 tests simulated the use of Bitcoin amongst institutions early after Bitcoin's Genesis block and later on in its cycle when fully mined. They used their own cryptocurrency, DNB Coin, and highlighted barriers to central bank adoption as being interoperability, industry fragmentation, and self-interest. Ron Bernstein, who led the research, said, history teaches us that when looking ahead into the distant future, it is wiser to predict that something is possible rather than that something is impossible. The blockchain technology offers a number of advantages over existing technologies, but there are also some drawbacks and barriers to overcome. Well, that's kind of a good segue into our next guest. Of course, we still have Christopher David, or Snuggles, from Arcade City here in studio with us, remaining as guest host and guest. We also have Dances with Bitcoin, or what's your real name again? Oh, yeah, Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factum, in studio with us, and none other than Scrooge McAltcoin, sometimes known as Daniel Kraywitz, here in studio with us. Guys, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome. Well, speaking of the Dutch Central Bank attempt at creating a cryptocurrency, now we all know that Bitcoin's on its way out and that altcoins are the wave of the future. And a good example of this recently was what happened with the DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization application that runs on Ether, and the rather crazy situation that unfolded with that. So I want to hear you guys. Now, I know, Daniel, you have some interesting stuff to say about that, and you recently wrote an article about the whole situation. So I'll start off with you, and then Brian, you can come in with comments as you like.
Sure.
Okay. Well, hi, I'm Daniel Kraywitz, also known as Scroogey McAltcoin, apparently.
Like you didn't know.
Well, I haven't written anything in a while. I've just been doing my work. So first I want to shout out to Justice Ranvier because his nice review of my previous article on this show inspired me to get writing again. And I would encourage anyone to go back and watch that or listen to that episode. And the article was called Reciprocal Altruism and the Theory of Money. But this article is easier to read, and it's called Ethereum is Doomed. So I had always sort of written off Ethereum as just another silly altcoin, so I didn't really look enough into it. But now I wish I had, because it was just so much more crazy than I realized. Like, so my
crazy in a good way?
No, my timeline for how quickly it will fail has moved forward significantly. It's a very strange system. It's kind of like what you might expect a teenager to design.
You mean like a teenage programming prodigy, right?
Well, I mean like somebody who somehow got the reputation of being a boy genius, but why he has this reputation eludes me. So I mean, it's hard for me to explain what's wrong with Ethereum in a way that a programmer or a non-programmer will understand. But basically, the TLDR is that it's very difficult to program in. It's very likely to have bugs. It's very easy to make bugs. And I think that a programmer who was, who took pride in his work would just not program in Ethereum.
So is it like, speaking on that, is it poorly written code? Where
it's poorly designed. I haven't looked at the code, but if you are a programmer, this might make sense, but it's like the Ethereum is like a big namespace or package, and every smart contract is just like an object in this namespace, and they can just call each other's functions. And it's not like a concurrent application where they're all running on different threads or different virtual threads. They just call each other's functions. And what happens with this is if you're a smart contract and you call a function from another smart contract, that function just runs right in the middle of your function. So you don't have time to recover from anything that you did up to that point in the function. And this other smart contract can call any of your public methods and try to do anything that messes with your internal state. And the bug, and that's not something that I would want to program in.
Are you saying like it can supersede? Like, I mean, I'm just totally trying to understand what you're saying.
What about the smart contract idea in general? Are you saying that it's worthless? Or, I mean, could this not be a good idea from another company, another developer?
No, I think that smart contracts are theoretically could be good. I don't really see why we would need or want Turing complete smart contracts. But
you say Turing complete smart contract?
Yeah, that was the buzzword that they used to promote Ethereum originally. I'm not sure they know what it means, but Ethereum is Turing complete. But the poor design doesn't.
Can you explain Turing complete? You're referring to Alan Turing?
Yes,
obviously.
So this means there's a maximum level of complexity that computer programs that a computer can have, and it's very easy to arrive at this maximum level of complexity. You have to work really hard to make a programming language that isn't Turing complete. It's very hard to prove that it's not. And this is a security feature of Bitcoin. Well, not in general. Brian gave me a weird look there. Yes, you could make a programming language that was easily proved to be not Turing complete. But in general, if you gave me an arbitrary programming language and you claimed that it wasn't Turing complete, it may be difficult to prove. Does
this have anything to do with the Turing test?
No, that's about whether a person or computer that you're talking to. Well, it's about whether a computer can pretend to be a person effectively.
Totally different. Okay.
Now I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we're kind of coming to break, but Turing basically elaborated the sort of computer of all computers, right? The sort of simple yes/no processor that is the foundation of all computing.
He created a conceptual computer before there were machines that are much like the computers we have today. There were some mechanical computational devices, but they were not general purpose.
Right. Okay, well, we'll talk more about that. We're coming to break with Daniel Krawietz, Brian Deary, and Christopher David. Stay tuned.
Apple has spent a boatload to convince Americans to store data online, but the company's co-founder says cloud computing is dangerous. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back to tell you about the black clouds over iClouds next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
For a decade, Apple's been selling the public on cloud technology. The idea is for users to store their files online in the cloud for a fee rather than saving them on their local devices. But Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak opposes the whole idea. He warns of digital disaster if people store their contents in the iCloud. To quote him directly, the cloud computing trend is horrendous. He's right for two reasons. First, the minute you store stuff on an iCloud, you sign away ownership of that data to Apple. And second, walls can never be built high enough to keep hackers out of servers, not even those built in the clouds. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
We'll be kidding about chemtrails.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. Been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian, but shouting at leaders who claim to be listening. And the pendulum swings from the left to the right. As momentum increases, the need for the fight, like a moment of blindness and a lifetime of sight. And I am caught somewhere in the middle.
Welcome back to the Crypto Show, guys. Let me round off this segment with, actually, that would mean I would be finishing the segment, so that's the wrong choice of words. Let me begin the segment with a Crypto Compare News Minute. Kolu raises $6.9 million for blockchain-based local currencies. Tel Aviv-based startup Kolu have raised $9.6 million for their local currency issuance model. The Series A round follows a $2.5 million seed round in 2015 and includes Spark Capital and Digital Currency Group as backers. Kolu was originally focused on developing colored coins, but is now looking to create local currencies on the blockchain for local cities as one particular example. Spark Capital, I bet that's a Kabbalistic reference. Well, let's get back to our guests. We have in studio Snuggles, Christopher David, founder of Arcade City, Scrooge McAltcoin, sometimes referred to as Daniel Krawietz.
Does everyone here have a weird nickname?
Yeah, just the three of you.
What's yours?
Master of the Universe, He-Man. That's
Okay.
mine, He-Man.
No, here's his. Where is it? Never mind.
If he's that excited, it must be pathetic and embarrassing.
All right, this is Cody Wilson with the Crypto Show. I'm here with Joel Williamson and our big man Chris. And
You call
listen,
me fat? And Cody Wilson did call me fat. He pretends like he did it, but he did.
So your nickname is Big Man Chris? Yeah. Okay.
No, Big Man Chris.
Yeah. Okay.
But that means you're calling me. I know you're referring to my fatness.
Well, that's also a term used in anthropology for local tribal leaders.
Like I think you just made that up, but I appreciate it. You mean like big man, like the big boss, like the
Right, yeah.
like the Don of
I
the
think that's
mafia?
that's a real term in anthropology. I think. Not that I'm a.
I can tell when
anthropologist.
Daniel's lying, but it's a sweet lie. It's a lie that's meant to flatter and to make me feel better about myself. So thank you, Daniel.
Okay, we'll look it up.
He insists on perpetuating this lie. Anyway, not important. Not the focus of our show. But let's get back. And of course, Dances with Bitcoin's Brian Deary also in studio with us.
Always good to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on. Well, Daniel, and of course, jump in, Brian, when appropriate. But I don't want to get too sidetracked in this, but it sounds still important and for understanding, I think, on a deeper level. We were talking about Turing complete, and let's just clarify, what does Turing complete mean? And you made reference similarly to computing complexity, and I guess define what computing complexity is and whether it's good or bad, and what Turing complete means.
Okay, well, there's another theory called computational complexity, which is totally different. So I'm not talking about that. What Turing completeness means is that for any program that you can describe in any programming language, a Turing complete language will be able to perform a set of operations which are equivalent to the computation being done by the any program. So
it could be like perfectly translatable into any program, basically?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Okay. And so why is this relevant to DAO? And you did mention computational complexity, which is different, you said, but how is that also relevant?
Well, so I just said there's a maximum level of complexity that a programming language can have, and I use the word complexity in a non-technical way, but there is a jargon in computer science. There's a subject called computational complexity, and that's just not what I'm talking about. It has to do with how quickly different functions can be computed.
Okay, so you're just using a non-technical term to
right.
Okay,
yeah,
I gotcha. And so I'm sorry. So why is the Turing complete relevant to the DAO?
Well, you need a Turing complete language if you want to have a distributed autonomous organization, because it needs to be able to run continuously and to react again and again to any input given to it. And it is it's typically a non-Turing complete language cannot have loops in it. Although if you were really careful, you could probably come up with one. But in general, you can't. If you have loops, it's very hard to prove that the program is always going to finish, which is a feature of which is what makes Bitcoin the non-Turing complete scripting language a feature, I should say. The fact that the script is always going to complete. It's always going to end.
So the Ethereum answer to this is we know they're going to end because we force them to end. If they can't pay for themselves to execute, we cut them off. Right. So that's the main objection that I'm hearing from your article is that it's really complex to code things in this system.
It's needlessly complex because they could have designed it better so that it's easier. But yeah, you're right. Eventually the program will run out of gas and then it'll stop. But that only makes things less terrible. It doesn't. You still have an environment in which a single bug can result in hundreds of millions of dollars being lost without the proper tools available to prove that a given program doesn't have any bugs. And you still have. It's still very easy to have bugs. You just don't have the ability to prove that your smart contract really is safe. And the gas, that's a safeguard, but it's not good enough when you have $100 million on the line.
So in Ethereum, there are multiple levels. So you've got the Solidity programming language, which is JavaScript-like, and then compiles down to virtual machine code, which is like assembly code, which is like the thing that runs on all computers. And Bitcoin has something that's very similar to that. All of the Bitcoin transactions have their own assembly code, their own machine code that runs. Every Bitcoin transaction is its own smart contract. It's a very dumb smart contract, but all Bitcoin transactions are basically hand-coded smart contracts. Can we not have get rid of the Solidity programming language and have to forego the amateurish way and then have people program directly in the virtual machine language?
Well, I'm really glad you asked about that, because that's actually a mistake that I made in my article that I have to correct. I wrote that the problem has to do with Solidity, the scripting language, but I learned that the same problem exists in the compiled, the Ethereum virtual machine. So you would have to design a new programming language that would compile to the Ethereum virtual machine, which would eliminate the unsafe operations in some way. So I'm not saying that Ethereum is not fixable, but I'm just saying that it will take a lot of work, and it's not going to work at all for a long time until they can design it better. And I'm not sure that they know how to do it either.
And it being the Solidity programming language.
The programming language and possibly the Ethereum virtual machine itself. I don't know enough about it to say that, but I know that the problem is actually deeper than what I said in my article.
Well, and I will say, too, allegedly, and I don't know enough. I mean, a lot of this is beyond me technically, but also many details of the situation I'm still not fully abreast of. But I will say it's unfortunate that allegedly the code for this DAO application was vetted by some third party and approved to be, I guess, more or less bug-free, or at least that they did not anticipate problems that were subsequently had. So clearly, I don't know if that, I don't want to jump to conclusions or make too declarative a statement, but it sounds like somebody was asleep at the wheel on some level. Did you have a comment, Daniel?
Yeah, you're right. There were reviews that the DAO code passed, and the reason it passed is that the programming situation that you're in Ethereum is so weird that people don't have experience hunting for these kind of bugs. So next time people will be able to find these things more easily. But I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to get to a point where Ethereum is actually safe to use.
So one of your objections was that it was it's very difficult to write code that basically runs in an adversarial environment. But this is what we do every day when we have code that runs on the internet, in our browsers, on our routers.
And save the answer to that question for the last segment. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Easy.
You bring us back when I tell you to bring us back. All right? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome back to the final segment of the Crypto Show. I am the boss here. I am in charge. No, I'm just kidding.
The big man.
The big man. That's right. Don't forget it. It's like anthropologic or something. Let's hold on. Let's do.
Yes. Be sure you're standing in front of him in the buffet line and not behind him.
Absolutely.
There will be nothing left.
Absolutely. Let's one last Crypto Compare news minute. Coinbase integrates PayPal Direct Sell. Coinbase have integrated Direct Sell to PayPal. Signs of warming feelings between the payments giant and the Bitcoin sector after Bitcoin hackathon last December and appointing long-time Bitcoin advocate Wences Cesares of Zappo, thank you, to their board earlier this year. Users will be capable of immediately withdrawing Bitcoin funds for a 3.5% fee to their PayPal accounts. Wences, I like that. It's like Good King Wenceslas or something. Anyway, thank you for correcting my pronunciation there. And that was our final Crypto Compare news minute. Thanks to Crypto Compare for providing all that up-to-date information on cryptocurrency markets and everything else related. Well, we're talking with Snuggles, a.k.a. Christopher David, founder of Arcade City, Scrooge McAltcoin, a.k.a. Daniel Krawitz, and I don't think he has another name, but Dances with Bitcoin. Oh, yeah, Brian Deary of Factom. And we were just talking about DAO and Ether and smart contracts. So I guess where was my, hold on, I got this, guys. So bringing this back, it's obviously you believe that the code underlying DAO was very flawed.
Well, I really want to answer Brian's question from last time.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
Because he asked a really good one. So could you repeat that?
So part of your objection in the article was that code is running in an adversarial environment where you can have other pieces of code which then attack your code. But this happens all the time on our routers and our web browsers. And so the world is not new to adversarial computing environments.
Yeah. So the big difference between that and Ethereum is if I have my own computer that is sending messages to other computers and receiving messages, I get to choose when I deal with messages that I received. But you don't get to do that in Ethereum. So here's something that can happen in Ethereum that's similar to the bug that occurred in the DAO. So let's say that I am a smart contract and I look in my account book. You've called my public function that says pay me the money that I owe you. And I look in my account book and it says, yes, I do owe Brian some money. So I hand you a check. Now, at this point, you get to do whatever you want, and I have to wait until you're done. That's how it works in Ethereum. So if I forgot to cross out of my account book that I've paid you before I send you the check, then my internal state is wrong at this point, and you can screw with me.
So he can execute that sort of demand payment function again?
Right,
or?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened, is this hacker figured out a way to demand payment over and over that resulted in more and more payments, and the smart contract, the DAO, never got around to marking him off as having been paid.
So is this something that someone could have manually gone in after the payment was received and been like, oh, put a stop to this, no more payments?
Oh, we'll get to that.
I don't know how that works. I can't answer that one.
Even if that was I'll put it this way, even if that was the case, clearly it should be foolproof against that. You shouldn't have to go in and do that, obviously, right? Well, Brian, go ahead.
So at the Toronto conference last weekend, there were some Ethereum guys talking about that, and there are mitigations against this to basically take the payments and put them into a lockbox of sorts. And
like escrow or something, or
I'm not 100% sure on how it works, but the point is that there are mitigations for this attack that can become standards as the industry matures.
Right. I'm not saying that you can't fix Ethereum. I'm just saying that I think that it's going to take so much work that by the time they can fix it, they will have people will have lost interest in it. I mean, I think that the amount of time it's going to take to make Ethereum safe to use is much longer than the investors believed. And there's going to be a lot more time where you just can't use it for anything.
Which, I mean, is a fair statement, somewhat speculative, but it sounds pretty reasonable that there are so many bugs, is what you're saying, that it's hard to believe that they're going to, at some point, the investment in time and money to fix it will just not be enough to actually fix all the bugs. And I will say, even the not the modifications, what did you say? The mitigations for the bug. I mean, I don't know, but you could argue like it's like a stopgap solution. And of course, if the stopgap solution itself isn't perfectly done, that could maybe lead to other bugs or errors. Or, I mean, ultimately, it sounds like just patching over a more fundamental problem, right? Or I don't know. Then.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, I think that you could design something that's a lot easier to use, and the designers of Ethereum didn't really know how to do that. And, and I certainly wouldn't try to design something as big and complicated as Ethereum. It's like a Frankenstein kind of story.
You mean one attributed to the wife of the person who actually wrote it?
Well, I mean, I'm not really. I mean, it's Mary Shelley is the name on the book, but you know what I mean. It's about hubris,
or hubris,
whatever,
as other people know.
So that's a great segue. So there's talk of hard forking Ethereum or soft forking Ethereum to lock up these funds that have been quote unquote stolen.
Oh, fork that!
Yeah, I think the hacker should. I think that he legally owns the money because the smart contract was illegally buying. I think we should honor the smart contract and let him keep the ethers. That's my position.
Well, I agree with you because like we had Anthony D'Orio on last show about his position was the same, and I agree. Like I don't have to know the technical stuff, which I don't, to understand that like if they reverse it, as I mentioned to him, it creates a moral hazard, right? I mean, it's basically the functional equivalent of a bank bailout, which creates moral hazard, and it basically would undermine confidence in Ether or the DAO, because if people expect that big mistakes are going to be reversed, and of course
it's exactly like a bank bailout.
Yeah,
it's
or a
exactly,
bail-in.
And
yeah,
and also the idea is that Ethereum is supposed to be decentralized, but if you can just do that, then it's really not. Like all of the extra apparatus is not really doing anything.
That's a really good point. Like that sort of undermines the whole idea that it's decentralized. If
It's not autonomous if man has to come back in and change it.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Well, and so, I mean, it sounds like obviously they've got their work cut out for them in that there's so many issues that it's going to be really difficult to correct, I guess, with the existing architecture. But what about smart contracts in general? Like the theory, the idea of it, especially obviously ones based on blockchain. I mean, is that workable?
Well, I don't really see a point in doing smart contracts with the blockchain. I mean, I'm a big fan of open transactions. I think that's what we'll be using. And I'm not saying that there's no reason that you might want a publicly verifiable program where you can see everything that's happening inside of it. But you don't really need a blockchain for that. And I don't think that most of the time you want something like that.
Well, and so what's the difference with open transactions then?
Well, open transactions is a protocol, and it runs on a computer, and it's not a blockchain. It's just you program different consequences, and you have different kinds of contracts that send money orders for different reasons, and it's just like running any other program.
Why is it based on blind signatures?
That's a feature. You don't have to use those.
Well, why is it qualitatively better than, say, Ether? I mean, what?
It works. That's better.
But do you know why it works, or can you explain why it works on a more general level?
So before we go there,
go ahead.
Chaumian Cash and this type of system was what internet money was supposed to be in the 90s, but it never really took off. And now we're what has changed in the 15 years or so since this type of system has come along post Bitcoin?
Well, the Chaumian Cash, it's like a digital banknote. So economically, it's very different from Bitcoin. And the cypherpunks started thinking about virtual currencies or digital currencies that were more like Bitcoin in the 90s. And they had ideas like BitGold and the one by Wei Dai.
B-Money?
Yeah, that one. Yes. And the difference is that those digital currencies are not supposed to be promises for paper currencies. Like a banknote is a promise to pay, and that's what Chaumian Cash is. So open transactions is able to work with dollars or bitcoins, and if you're working with dollars, you just get a money order, and then the bank has to honor the order. Whereas if you're using bitcoins, then it just sends the bitcoins, just like how you would normally.
The following paid for by Chris Odom. Well, we got about a minute left. Brian, or
more correctly, Stash Crypto, not Open Transactions.
Paid for by Stash Crypto. No, they do great work over there though at Stash Crypto and Open Transactions. And Chris Odom and crew are the brilliant guys. So I'm not surprised by Daniel's,
who's no longer being bitten by mosquitoes in his backyard.
Thanks to
Hilton Home Improvements, building a screen room.
Well, 30 plus seconds left. Any final thoughts, Daniel, or Dances with Bitcoins?
I sell your ethers.
But not your now.
The whole point of blockchains is to have a disimpassioned third party. And by having external influences being able to change states of it, it gets rid of that disimpassion.
Defeats the purpose, totally.
Defeats the purpose.
Absolutely. Well said. All right.
So you're pro-DAO.
Christopher David, Scrooge McAulcoin, Dances with Bitcoins, Snuggles, rather. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.